What's up, y'all? John Mixdowns here with Intention Music Tech, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up aux tracks and effect sends in Pro Tools, and most importantly, why it's so important for you to be using effect sends when you're mixing. So let's go. But first, before we get into the tutorial, if you need a professional mix and master and want me to mix your music, go to johnmixdowns.com or click the link in the description and follow the fast and easy 3-step process. And remember, all of my mixing and mastering services have a 100% money back guarantee to make sure you're completely satisfied with the final result. So I understand for a lot of you, when you're first getting into music production and recording and mixing, you just don't really see the importance of using effect sends, but there's 3 crucial reasons why you should be using effect sends when you're recording and mixing and doing music production. Number 1, it really cuts down on your CPU usage. If you use effect sends, you don't have to use nearly as many plugins in your session. So that's very important. Number 2, it allows you to be more versatile and more creative when you're adding effects, as it allows you to add more effects to your effects. And this is such an important key element to taking your creativity and your mixes to the next level. And number 3, it's easier to automate your effects when you use effect sends. And we're going to get into the session. I'm going to show you how all of this works. So the name of the song I'm using for this tutorial is Ego, and the artist is my homegirl and a good friend of mine. Her name is Nanya Spark, super talented artist from Nigeria. So make sure you go check out the rest of her music on all streaming platforms. So before I get into this, I just quickly want to mention that this particular tutorial is for beginners. So if you're new to Pro Tools and you're just new to understanding what effect sends are and how to use them, this is who this tutorial is for. This routing and all this stuff definitely gets much more complex, but for today, we're just going to touch on the basics. So if you're really new to this and you're new to Pro Tools and you're just learning how to understand effect sends have to be routed through what's called an aux track. So what we need to do, the first thing we need to do to set this up is create a new aux track. So I'm going to create one new aux track. Keep in mind, most of the time when you're setting up effect sends, it's going to be in stereo. You can use mono, but again, that's more advanced mixing. So when you're first learning how to do this, just to be safe, just keep all of your effect sends in stereo. And we go here and we go to aux input, and we can name this aux input. So this is going to be an effect that we're going to use. So for this tutorial, we're just going to use reverb. So I'm going to call this reverb for now and create an aux track. So here is my aux track, and I'm just going to color this differently so you can see the difference between the two and see what we're working with here. So this is how we're going to start routing the effect. So once we create the aux track, what we have to do is bring up a reverb, and of course any reverb will work. We can use the Neoverb from Isotope. Why not? This is a great reverb. So now that we have our reverb on our aux track, what we want to do is go to our input and find a bus to route this to. So right now, I don't have any other effect sends in this session. This session is just very raw and very bare for the sake of this tutorial. So now I have this routed through bus 1 and 2, and I'm a big advocate for keeping sessions organized. And an easy way to do that is by always labeling everything. So once we find a bus for the input, right away we want to rename it, and we're going to call this reverb. So now that I've named this reverb, what we want to do is go to the track. So I have my lead vocal track here, and we're just going to put it right on the track. One thing I want to mention, if you're using Pro Tools, as you can see here, I have my sends and my inserts here. And if you don't have this in your session and you don't know how to bring this up, you can right click over here, and this is how you bring up the sends and inserts, IOs, all of the menu stuff is right here. So I can click them off if I want, or bring them in to the session that way. So these have to be routed through a send. So now I go to my bus, and right here I have reverb. And this is really important why you should be labeling, because once you start adding a lot more effect sends to your sessions, but you don't label them, they'll be very hard to find as you start going through your session and you start adding more effects to your sessions. So really important to make sure you label everything. So now in Pro Tools, we have our floating fader, and we can literally just start bringing in the reverb from here. So I'm going to play the track so we see what we have to work with here.
Call my guys, we popping on the low. Oh, where the giveaway, I'm very sorry, why no more, me more. Life is too sweet, is spicy, as you know, moto. Color chick, color be realize, say, now, oh, God, there. Ah, yeah. Padro must stay far away. Ah, yeah.
Okay, so that vocal has some effects on it. I've put some EQ and some compression on it, and it sounds clean, but there's no reverb or delay or anything like that. So it's dry in that sense. So one important thing for a lot of modern reverbs and effects, all of them have a wet and dry signal. When we're using effect sends, what we want to do is make sure that the wet signal is always 100%. This is very important when you start using effect sends. If you're not using effect sends, then you control the amount, of course, of level through the mix knob. But when you're using effect sends, it's important to have the mix 100% on the plugin. So always keep that in mind when you start using effect sends. So now I'm just going to start bringing in this reverb through this send.
Call my guys, we popping on the low. Oh, where the giveaway, I'm very sorry, why no more, me more.
And it's really that easy. So this works for all effects. Whatever effects you're using, you route it the same way. So you make an aux track, you bring in whatever effect you want on that aux track. You go to your input, find a free bus that you want to route to, and send the effect to, and then pull up that send on whatever track you want to send the effect to. So that's number one. Number two, I want to show you the importance of using effect sends and how we can add effects to our effects. So because we have this on a separate track, this reverb, we can get really creative and add different effects to our effects. So just as an example, we can add a chorusing effect to this reverb.
Call my guys, we popping on the low. Oh, where the giveaway, I'm very sorry, why no more, me more. Life is too sweet, spicy, as you know, moto. Color chick, color be realize, say, now, God, there.
So as you can see, the creativity is kind of endless when it comes to this technique, and this is one of the biggest reasons why you should be using effect sends. If you're new to mixing, again, a lot of times my students, they don't really understand why they should be using effect sends. This is a huge reason, because if you were to just put a reverb right on this track, that's it. You can't do anything else to it except control the parameters that are on that plugin. So this is a huge reason why you should be using effect sends, and this can just keep going. We can just keep adding effects to this reverb to really make that reverb stand out and get creative with it. And the third reason why it's really beneficial to use effect sends is because it's easier to automate our effects this way. So normally if you wanted to automate your effects in Pro Tools, for example, if we wanted to automate a parameter on this reverb, we'd have to go to auto, and then we would have to do it this way and go through all these parameters to automate it a specific way, which is, it's great to have that kind of flexibility with your automation, but sometimes we just want quick automation, and using effect send is a great way to do that. So I'm just going to X this out and show you. So because we have the reverb on our track here, if we just open up our automation lane and we go here and we see we have the reverb, I can mute this or I can pan it. I can do whatever I want from this automation lane, and it's nice and easy. So just for example, if we listen to this verse here, and let's just say we wanted to take the reverb off of the second half of this verse, then we can do that much easier using an effect send, and I'll show you how.
Call my guys, we popping on the low. Oh, where the giveaway, I'm very sorry, why no more, me more. Life is too sweet, spicy, as you know, moto. Color chick, color be realize, say, now, God, there. Ah, yeah. Padro must stay
So just for example, say we just wanted to take the reverb off of this section. I wouldn't do that in this song, but just as an example, I'm going to show you how easy it is using effects. And so all I would do is literally just pull it off here, and let's check it out. So we've pulled the reverb off of there, we've muted it, and it's just really easy that way. So those are three big reasons why it's important to use effect sends. There's huge advantages to using effect sends. So the sooner you start doing it, the better moving forward for your music production and your mixing. So there's just a couple other really important things that I want to touch on when it comes to using aux tracks and effect sends. And number one is understanding what solo safe mode is. And this particular feature is specific to Pro Tools, and it's very important that you understand what it is. So if I were to create another aux track or an effect send, I'm just going to just say, call this a delay. As you can see here, when I created it, the solo button here is grayed out, and that means it's in solo safe mode. So in the newer versions of Pro Tools, when you make an aux track, well, this is such an important feature that they added to Pro Tools. So when you make an aux track, it automatically is put in solo safe mode. So if I hold Command and press this, then you can see it's not grayed out anymore and it's available. But the reason why it should be in solo safe mode is as soon as you route something, an effect send to another track, if you press solo on that track, you then have to press solo on the track and the aux track that you're routing to. So I'm going to quickly show you this. If this isn't in solo safe mode, watch what happens. I can't hear anything because it's not in solo safe mode. I would have to press the solo button here as well, or on the track. And the more effects tracks you put in your session, the more annoying this becomes. So it's very important that you understand solo safe mode. So if this is grayed out, that's when you know it's in solo safe mode. Now I can solo this track, and it just worked without me having to solo the aux track as well.
Life for too sweet, sweet, spicy,
Sorry, I had I took solo safe off my mix bus, my verse mix bus track here. I have all of my tracks routed to my main verses mix bus here. And that's just something that I always do, depending on where you're at in your journey. If you're not that far, eventually you'll get to the point where you start doing more subgrouping. So that's solo safe mode, and that's very important to understand. So if you're using a new version of Pro Tools, when you create aux tracks, they automatically are created in solo safe mode. But if you're using an older version of Pro Tools, you'll have to go in and use the keyboard shortcut, which is hold Command and press S on the track. So that's solo safe mode, and it's very important to understand when you're using Pro Tools. Now, the second thing I want to point out when you're creating these aux tracks, as you can see, every time you create a track in Pro Tools, it just by default is at 0 dB. And it's good practice just to leave your aux tracks at 0 dB and just change the level through the effect send. And the last thing I quickly want to mention about using aux tracks and effect sends has to do with busing. So if we were to use this delay and I were to find a bus, as you can see here, I have bus 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have choices there, but as your sessions start to get larger, you're going to need more buses to do more routing. And I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that in Pro Tools. So what we want to do is go to Setup and go to I/O. And in the tabs here, we want to go to Bus. And if we go to New Path, we can create new buses. So a lot of times, again, just when you're first starting out, it's just safe practice to just keep everything in stereo. So we want stereo, and then we want to auto create subpass for that bus. So this came in down here. I can move it up here, and we have a new bus. And then again, if you want to get rid of buses or rename them, you can rename them here, and you can really organize your routing in the back end by going into your I/O setup and doing it this way. So this is also something important to understand when you're first learning Pro Tools, to understand where your buses are and how to create new ones, or just edit them or delete them or do whatever you want. So this is the basics of using aux tracks and effect sends in Pro Tools. And I've covered a lot of little tips and things that you really need to understand moving forward. When I first started using Pro Tools, I didn't really have anyone to show me a lot of these little tips, and it's really helpful to understand them when you're first starting out. Hey, so if you're enjoying this content and you're really serious about learning how to mix and you're really looking to take your mixing game to the next level, make sure you check out my brand new recording academy at attentionmusictech.com, because for a limited time I'm offering free access to my first 2 courses. They're part of my new Mixing Clinic series of mini courses that are a real comprehensive dive into mixing lead vocals and mixing beats. So when you sign up to the academy, you'll get access to both the Pro Lead Vocal Mixing Clinic and the Savage Beats Mixing Clinic. And these 2 courses are packed with some of my favorite mixing tips and techniques that I use on all my tracks and work for any genre of music. And I know are guaranteed to help you get more professional sounding mixes, because we're talking over 2 hours of mixing tips that aren't accessible anywhere else but in the academy. So you really don't want to miss out on this opportunity. All you got to do is go to attentionmusictech.com to sign up. And again, this is all free stuff, but only for a limited time. And when you do sign up, you don't only get access to the 2 mini courses, but you get special offers and content only subscribers see. And also you get automatically entered to win one of our free monthly giveaways of industry leading plugins from FabFilter and Plugin Alliance. And if this promo is over by the time you guys see this video, don't worry about it, because I always have great offers going on for all my academy members. So go to attentionmusictech.com and check out all the goodies I got going on for you guys.